Geno looks sort of unheld back in this system. He looks like he's fully unleashed. He can perform better in terms of the numbers, but in terms of just an all-round performance, I thought it was really impressive from Geno.
I don't disagree. I think it's hard to look at that tape, and even Coach McDonald this morning said, I didn't see a bad throw on tape, and I don't either, even the incomplete. And he had some drops. Like I said, he would have had statistically his best game by far if he hadn't, especially if Haynes holds up on that one play and gets DK on the long one. But he just seemed in absolute total command, and he really has since the first drive against the Broncos, in total command of that offense, and it fits his skill set perfectly, and he's adapted to, even with the issues up front, offensive line issues are just part of being a Seahawk fan, right? I mean, they've been going on for a long time, but some of our quarterbacks in the past haven't reacted to it the right way. Geno still trusts his pocket, and something clicked last year, and he became so good at maneuvering in the pocket, feeling pressure, and just making those subtle little moves. There was that throw he had, I think it was early first quarter, was it JSN or DK over the middle, where he gets pressure from the right side kind of in his face. He doesn't have to look at it. He just feels it. So he slides backwards. Mina Kimes retweeted this play. He just slides backwards and then so he's not set. His foot's not in the ground. And while he's sort of drifting backwards away from the pressure, throws an absolute dart into a tight window about 25 yards down the field for a completion. It's a throw that not only aren't there many quarterbacks in the NFL that can make, but they won't even see it because they don't even think that it's in their tool belt. Absolutely impressive performance. And one of those performances that should, if you're watching it, if you had any doubts about Geno before, it should give you confidence moving forward that we're going to see more performances like this. Because, look, say what you want about the Patriots year that they had last year, but I think that defense is going to prove to be pretty good over the course of the season.
Yeah, I agree.
Agreed. Go on, Mitch. Hit us with point number 4.
Point number 4 is I felt like special teams held quite a few of the key moments in the game. I thought the punting from our man Michael Dixon was on point again. There's plenty of times that we were 3 and out, but we pinned them into the 10 or 15, which was great to see. He's super consistent, possibly the most consistent player on our roster, honestly. I can't remember a bad game for Michael Dixon. There's the block field goal. There was so many contributions on special teams. Tackling on special teams was great. You didn't see too much getting ripped off on kick returns. It was just a really solid performance. Everyone's talking about Grubb and Aiden Durde and Mike Mack and the new systems we've got. Special teams is being coached really well, I think, by Jay Harbaugh at the moment.
It's always fun to talk about special teams, right? I mean, you take it for granted.
That felt sarcastic.
I wasn't sure if it was sarcasm or not.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that the Seahawks pay their punter and their kicker what they do. There's a reason they didn't bring in any competition for them in the offseason. It is impressive. I do not understand how come Michael Dixon hasn't even made a Pro Bowl since his rookie year. He was first team All-Pro as a rookie, for crying out loud. His aggregate numbers since then are better. I think he's just so good that people take him for granted. They'll probably give All-Pro this year to the Bears punter. Troy Taylor, is that the kid's name? He's an Australian too, because he was on Hard Knocks and he's such a big story and he's new and Michael Dixon, I think, is the best overall punter in the league. And that punt he had to pin him deep late was huge. D. Williams, I thought, had a much, much better week 2 than in week 1, and showed why the Seahawks have decided to devote an entire roster spot just to him. Had a big return in a big moment there, seemed a lot more sure-handed, and his decisions on punts of when to fair catch inside the 10 were much more sound. So, can't count him out either.
It was nice to see, especially when you think that he has been brought into the squad purely as a kick returner. And obviously he's had the muff. He looked a bit unsure at times as well. He had the one that he let sail behind him. So I think he's looking a bit more assured under that high ball, which means he's able to, first of all, judge where he is and where that ball's going, if he's got the space in front of him to make that run. And I'm waiting for him to break a big one off because we know he can do it. We've seen it in college as well. And it'd be, you know what, Mitch? Mentioning special teams, okay, I'll give you that.
And
It's
you know,
not
it's
spoken about
interesting
enough.
just one more quick point. We're 2 games into this, and so we're getting a little bit more data. But the way teams are approaching the new kickoff rule, I do wonder if we're going to see some tweaks to that in the offseason, because it seems to me like, at least the Seahawks games I watch, you don't see kickoffs as much on red zone or whatever, that teams are willing to give teams an opportunity to return kicks early in games, because, maybe there's a chance they can knock the ball out, right? Get a turnover, flip the field. But when the game's on the line late in the game, teams they're not taking a chance, and they're just kicking it in the end zone or out, and willing to give teams the ball on the 35, knowing that that's a sure thing. So I think if that continues to happen, it sort of, short circuits the whole rule. And I think there's been talk of maybe moving it out to the 40, if that's the case, and maybe that would change some teams' minds, but hasn't really been impactful.
It's not. You've seen so many people just kicking it dead, and it completely nullifies that. I mean, I think our friend Drew Sports has just put out there as well, the Broncos punter. It's been an absolute tear recently, pinning teams back. We saw it in week 1, and then we saw it again against the Steelers. That is the value of a punter, a good punter. So, okay, special teams matter.
Value of altitude too. I'm always going to knock Denver punters a little bit, because they get to play 8 to 9 games in 6,000 feet elevation. So
yeah, I was going to say, you're going to be able to kick the ball a fair distance with that. With that, that's us through the first 8 points. I will rattle through mine, because Dan, if you have time, we do have some questions that have been asked as well.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So my point. So point 9, offensive checks at the line of scrimmage. I think we glossed over this earlier, but the fact that Geno has been given the freedom by Grubb to go to the line of scrimmage, see what the defense is doing, and he can have 2 calls that he can check to. I think that opened up the DK touchdown, where we got to the line, there was a check, there was some motion, and they didn't know what was happening, which allowed him to just breeze straight past the safety and the cornerback for that touchdown. The more that evolves as well this season, I think we'll see more confusion. The Pats are a really well-drilled defense, and they were countering what we were throwing at them at times, which was evident by some of the PBUs, even the drop catches where they may not be in open space. It's because there was a defender breathing down someone's neck. Although Noah Fant, no excuse for some of those. I think that moving forward, seeing the fluidity of these play calls at the line of scrimmage is going to pay dividends really, really well as we get to the midway point of the season moving forward.
I love the motion, and I started looking this up last night, and I got sidetracked, so I still haven't. Do either of you know who the guy doing color on Fox was yesterday? Because he was fantastic, and there were a number of times in the game where he would bring something up and then it would happen. Right before the DK touchdown, he was talking about the matchup with Gonzalez, and they hadn't really exploited that yet. And so, Gonzalez must be doing a good job, but look, they're going to take shots to DK at some point, and they did. But he talked extensively throughout the game about the motion and the way Grubb uses it. And you go, there it is again. And sometimes, motion back in the old days when I played, and even up through the 80s with the West Coast offense and everything, it was kind of predetermined. It was just part of the play. It was meant for deception, and it would just be one guy going in motion, and that was it. And now it's almost like it's kind of fluid throughout the play, and you'd see players changing direction. You see multiple players going in motion almost on every play to just try and determine whether it's zone or man. And I don't know, man. The more I watch Ryan Grubb coordinate an offense, the smarter I think he is. I think he's really, really good. I think he's really good, guys. I think we got a good one.
I'd like to thank Bryce from the Hawks Zone Rundown. It was Jonathan Vilmer, who's an ex-Saints and Jets linebacker.
He was great. I thought he was really, really insightful. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that, Bryce. And Jonas as well. You chimed up, and Kenny Albert was there as well. My second point is going to be a bone of contention. Is Charbonnet cut out to be a full-time backup or step in? I throw this in as an incendiary. I think he's a great running back, and I've been on the hype train. I think yesterday wasn't his finest showing, and it's got a lot of people talking. Now, I'd like to say, I'd throw this out purely as a question. I think he's a fantastic running back who brings a lot to this team. And I think he's more of a volume running back when it comes to getting him into the game. He needs to have 20, 30 touches to be able to find his gaps, make sure he's making those big explosive plays and just run through someone enough times where he's going to get free. However, gentlemen, do you think he is an adequate backup to K9?
For me, it's a no. In one way. Sorry to cut you off, Dan. I just wanted to
No, I was
while it's in my head because I'm going to forget. Okay, well, I see this so differently. Charbonnet is a hammer, and Kenny Walker is a saber. Right? Those are two very different weapons for two very different sets of armor that you need to penetrate. Right? So inevitably, if you're missing your saber and you're trying to use your hammer, there's going to be some compatibility issues. And I don't think Charbonnet was ever drafted to be a backup to Ken Walker. He was picked in the draft to be a complement to Ken Walker. One is tenderizing and one is slashing, and we seem to have built a running back room, including Halani on the practice squad, to have adequate backups to Ken Walker and to Charbonnet, but we didn't use Ken Walker's backup yesterday at all. We didn't see. We called up Halani. We didn't use the quicker runner to the outside and scheme him open and throw balls out wide in the flats to running backs. We didn't see Kenny Mack doing anything either. Receiving as a back. No, so we do have replacements for Ken Walker, but none of them are Charbonnet. So in answer to your question, I don't think he can be, and I don't think he was intended to be.
I think he has a very specific style, and you have to put him in a position to succeed. And yesterday was an eye-opener for me. I mean, I watched the tape of him coming out of UCLA. I'd have to go back again and look at Chip Kelly's system. Was it, more conducive to him doing what he does well? And was it wider splits? Was there a lot more like counter motion? Was it more outside zone stuff? Charbonnet, if I'm going to, compare him to a past Seahawks quarterback, I think he's more like Sean Alexander than he is, Ken Walker or Marshawn Lynch, where he doesn't have sudden quickness. Like at his size, his athleticism is impressive, but he doesn't have sudden quickness, whereas Ken Walker can get to full speed in 1 or 2 steps. And what they were doing yesterday is they kept running these like not, almost pistol, but like deep shotgun runs that were slow to develop. And they might have even been at times they were read option type stuff where Geno might pull the ball out. And so by the time he's getting the ball, he's 4 yards deep in the backfield. You can't put all that on him because there just weren't any big holes. And he doesn't have the explosive, sudden quickness to be able to get into a small hole or get outside like Ken Walker does. He can make something out of those plays. And so I don't think they did him any favors. It's the one knock I have on Ryan Grubb yesterday. I think they didn't go away from that soon enough. There were a couple plays late where they got him out in space in the passing game. There was the screen pass that was the absolute perfect call against pressure late in overtime. That was one of the calls of the game. I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see Charbonnet getting out in the flat. We saw the touchdown pass against the Broncos. And so I just don't think he's that dynamic of an inside runner unless there are gaping holes. And so A, run different types of running plays for him, or B, let's at least get a couple reps in there for McIntosh, because I think he showed during the preseason he was the most dynamic runner of the three of, him, Halani, and Charbonnet when Walker's not in there.
That's why I put the point in, just to talk about. And I completely agree with you. I don't think he runs well out the shotgun. I think he needs to be close to the line of scrimmage in order than just to pound it through in between that A and B gap. He can cut outside, so playing in the flats was fantastic. I think yesterday we were still playing a running game for K9 with Charbonnet in there, whereas he, like you said, he hasn't got that sudden quickness and burst, so he can't just jump to the outside and go on like a K9. So agreed. Thank you very much for everyone writing comments in there as well. They are all very, very apt. I'm going to get through my last two, and then we've got a couple of questions that have been asked from our Discord. So trouble over the middle covering tight ends. Hunter Henry became a Rob Gronkowski yesterday. and I'm still trying to work out why. All I can see is the confusion over the middle as to whose assignment it was, trying to play some sort of zone where they just didn't cover that area.
Yeah, that was concerning. It reminded me of, some games in the past where teams would just find something they could pick on, and we just didn't adapt to it. But we did ultimately. And I know I saw some people online that were ripping Julian Love for giving up a couple of those pass plays early. And I haven't watched all 22 yet, but there must have been something maybe in the coverage there where he was the guy in the area, but it just wasn't schemed right for him to be in a good position to make a play, because, he starts off, Brissett goes 7 for his first 7. Henry has 7 catches for 98 yards in the first half. But then there was a point in the game, second half especially, where they put Love more on Henry exclusively. And after that point, Brissett went 4 for his next 14. So they did find something there. One of the analysts that I follow, can't remember his name, sorry, was saying, called it a big nickel, and that's what we saw that they shifted to, with more of like less Trey Brown, more when I see the snap counts today. I think we'll see this more of Devin Witherspoon on the outside of Tariq Woolen, and then using Julian Love down in the box more to cover the tight ends. We'll see what happens. This week, Miami that's not really their game. But certainly 2 weeks from now, Monday Night Football with Sam Laporta looming, Seahawks are going to have to figure that out.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun one to watch. Hopefully, like I said, with the adjustments that we made in the second half, at least it shows that adaptability, which is something we've not had before in defense. I hope when we play against someone like Sam Laporta, but then you've also got to look at the fact they've got Jameson Williams, they've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Montgomery. I think Gibbs might still be injured for that game, which is a bit of a godsend. But that's a lot of weapons that we're going to try and cover. Mitch, what do you think about the trouble over the middle?
It's painful to see. I can't remember. In fact, I think the last time I felt that sort of bullied over the middle, it was probably the season opener against the Rams, where Stafford just seemed to be keeping on hitting slot targets, and we just didn't seem to find a way to stop it. However, in this game, as Dan says, we did adjust, and to true Drew Sports point there, he said it felt like we stopped the stuff to tight ends and ended up giving up more to the running backs. So we lost something in run support in order to bolster over the middle. I think there's a lot of truth in that. But hey, you're never going to stop everything, right? And they're always going to try and pick on something. And it may work for a period of time. It's the show of a good coaching staff if you can adjust to what you're seeing. So,
and similar to my point I made about Grubb earlier, we're seeing that from McDonald and Dirty in the defense too. They're not waiting till halftime to adjust or sticking stubbornly with what they're doing, thinking, well, we'll just execute. Like we saw it was a back and forth chess match the whole game. New England started bringing in that extra, Caden Wallace, that extra tackle that they had as a jumbo tight end, and going 13 personnel with an extra lineman. So the Seahawks started countering with, they left Hankins on the field more there at the end of the second quarter, especially with Williams and Jay Reed and those guys, and went with some bigger players. I can't wait to sit back and watch the game over again, knowing the outcome, not having to stress about it, because I think it's going to be one of the most fun rewatches, because of all the constant adjustments. This sounds archaic, I know, but there was just so much coaching going on in that game, and between two really young coaching staffs, it was fun to watch.
And that's the thing. I think we'll end up just dissecting so many games this season due to the coaching and how it's been done. I'll get on to the 12th final talking point, and we've gone over this throughout the pod. Thank you to everyone who's joined in as well. Really appreciate everything that you guys have brought in with the comments. Team mindset, grinding out the win. Now, we've said about the fact there's no more toxic positivity. The guys are showing fantastic poise at all moments in the game. Oh, that sneer on Mitch's face. I think the mindset of this team is something that we haven't seen for quite a few years now, where the guys play for themselves. They don't get too down if a play blows up and they give away points. They keep coming back And that is the sign of a great team for me. The fact that we're building this 2 games into the season and they're just grinding out wins. There was no letting up, even though we allowed that touchdown in the 4th. We managed to level it up, and then we came back. We stopped their drive in overtime and managed to win it with a field goal. I will be happy this season if we grind out wins like that and show that mindset, even if we lose some narrow ones, but we still show that mindset to keep coming back at people, because that's just going to keep evolving. It's going to keep growing, and it's a culture that will breed within this team and all the rookies and new signings for years to come.
Agree.
Yeah, I mean, a win's a win, but I do think you make a great point that you learn a little bit more about a team with games like this, but also these games are a little bit more valuable when it gets down into December and, the weather starts getting crappy and you get into playoffs where everyone's more evenly matched and games come down to one play or another, and you feel like you might be at a disadvantage at a certain point, but you can turn it around. And, we've seen tons and tons of comeback wins over the years from the Seahawks, but they were more along the lines of like they just seemed lost for a half or 3 quarters, and then something clicked and they figured out, and they just just took the reins off and just let everything hang out. I thought that this was more along the lines of just kind of this constant battle throughout the game to figure out how to succeed, and it was just push pull the whole game, and they ended up coming out on top because they had the best quarterback on the field that day.
Yeah. It's so nice to see. It's so nice to say that as well. Mitch, would you like to say anything about the mindset before we hit the questions? Because Dan is a very busy man and he's got another podcast that he's going to be doing today. So for those
hours from now.
Hours, fine, that's all right. We're going to keep you. We're going to keep you hostage for a little bit then.
No, I haven't really got anything to add, but I definitely agree with all the points you've made. I completely concur.
Oh, thank you. That makes a change.
Who knew you guys knew what you were talking about, eh?
That would never fly on ESPN. That's too boring. You guys.
It's because you're here, Dan. Usually
they hate each other a little bit more. You get more ratings. Be mean to each other. Yeah,
I'm not going to in me. So, for those who just joined in for the first time, thank you very much. We do have a Discord channel, and these that we put down as your questions are questions from the Discord. It is our pinned post on X. You can find it on our Instagram and our Facebook, everything. But we like to give members of the Discord an opportunity to ask questions to ourselves and our guests in preparation, because there's so many flooding in that we can't get to all of them. So I do apologise. We will try and get to those after, or if we've got time today. So here's a few. Gary, our good friend Gary, another close win. Are we feeling confident about our preseason win predictions? Dan, I don't think you did the predictions, did you? Did you give a
not with you guys? And I didn't do a game by game breakdown this year, just because there were so many unknowns. I thought that was kind of a exercise in futility. But I have said on the record, this feels like an 11-win team to me. And it still does, more so now, I think, because of the way that they've been playing. And to Gary's point, though, he says these were meant to be easy wins. I never, ever adopt that philosophy. This is the NFL. This is the NFL. And unless you're playing Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers, there are no such thing as easy wins. And I think we will see as the season goes along. Yeah, I don't think Denver's going to be very good, but I think New England might be. And I think that's going to bear itself out over time, that maybe that offensive performance we saw yesterday to grit through that and get a win is going to be more impressive when we look back and see what New England does to other teams defensively as well.
Mitch, did we say 11-6 or 10-7? I have to go back on that and check. I've got a notepad somewhere as well.
I had it close. I had us with a winning record, but not by any huge stretch. Yeah,
I think we were 10-6. I'll recheck and I'll post it at some point. Bryce, our good friend from the Hawks on Rundown. If you guys who are watching haven't subscribed to them, give Bryce and Ryan a sub. Our friend here, Dan, will be with them later on today.
Indeed.
So I will be hopefully watching that through one very tired eye, or I'll be catching it in the morning whilst I'm doing some work. But how much longer do you think they keep the guard tandem going? And how much of an impact is Brown's blocking ability being missed in the run game? Because I think it's actually a big missing link right now.
It's funny. I just saw a tweet today from someone who covers the Arizona Cardinals talking about how Evan Brown was one of their, best free agent signings, and that his PFF grades in the mid 70s overall, and he's been a really solid player for them at guard, which when we signed him was supposed to have been his weaker position between that and center. I don't know if it's Brown specifically as much as, again, this is the first time these three players have ever played together, right? And Connor Williams, I don't know if he's not 100% healthy, but it's going to take some time. He got beat a couple times yesterday. Didn't grade out very well in PFF after being a top 5 center the last couple of years. So I do think that's going to take some time. The question to me isn't if, it's when is Christian Haynes going to start? Now, McDonald said on his coach's show today, look for him to get even more reps. And I think he even used the word rotation with Anthony Bradford at right guard. I would like at some point for them to consider maybe giving him some reps at left guard. I thought he played exceptionally well there in the preseason, even though he'd never played it in college. And I suspect when I go back and look at the full game replay on all 22, I'm going to see more bad reps from Laken Tomlinson yesterday than Anthony Bradford. And there were times, especially that last preseason game against the Browns, where they had Haynes at left guard and Bradford at right guard. And I thought maybe that was our best combo. So I do think at some point Haynes is going to be in there. It's just a matter of time. These guys, they have to improve. I mean, Tomlinson had some horrible reps yesterday. I think more so than Bradford.
He's had a few. So Bryce would just like to apologize. I meant Pharaoh Brown, the tight end.
I was talking about Evan Brown. It was because I saw that tweet this morning that the Cardinals really like what he's doing. Yeah, maybe. I thought I was really impressed with AJ Barner as a blocker week 1. I think they pointed out on the telecast yesterday there were a couple of things that he missed, but he's not Pharaoh Brown. We haven't seen that yet, so I honestly don't know what kind of impact he's going to have on this offense because we haven't seen him yet. But I'm excited to do so. Hopefully this week.
Well, hopefully. So the next 3 comments and questions from Gary again. He's a very active member, and we do appreciate him because he's got some fantastic insight as a very, very long-time supporter of the Seahawks. He's happy with defensive play. I think we might have answered a few of these, although there's a lot of room for improvement. What are your thoughts on how the offense has played? I feel pretty good, bearing in mind that I thought the O-line was our weakness, and unfortunately it's proven to be the case. So I think we've addressed that. We're happy with this offense. It's going to keep maturing. It's one of those that's going to keep maturing. It's going to keep building. The more they install, the more familiar they get. The O-line as well, as Dan's just said, I think the more they play together, when we find those right combinations, will not be an issue for us.
And I think one thing this offense will do at some point that we're not used to seeing here in Seattle is, because of Ryan Grubb's mentality, something he's shown at every stop along the way, working his way up through the college ranks, there will be a couple of those games this year where everything clicks and they pour it on. Because unlike some last offensive coordinators here, he doesn't play it close to the vest. Once he finds a matchup he can exploit and is successful in doing so, he will continue to go to it over and over. I can tell you because I saw it firsthand when he was at UW against my Cougars, and Michael Penix 2 years ago in the Apple Cup found some mismatches in the secondary, and just it was bombs away. It was just we couldn't get out of the way of his deep passes. It was unbelievable. And I think we'll have games like that where everything will click and the offense will have really, really productive days and prolific days even. And I would argue that, you look what they did yesterday with 0 running game and the game that Geno had, and then 2 receivers going over 10 catches and 100 yards. That's spectacular.
Could you imagine that the last 2 seasons?
No, because it was almost like they would start games. It was almost like they waited. Like it just, how many games have we had over the last few years? 2 years ago, I think of the game at the Chargers, where they got out to a fast start on offense, had a 17-0 lead in the second quarter. There were a couple of long touchdowns there. Geno was ripping it, and then they take their foot off the gas and let the other team back into it. I don't think that's going to happen. I think games like that where they start fast, they're just going to keep pushing.
I think that speaks to the next point. Our thoughts on Grubb's play calling and schemes to date. I think it is going to be a matter of once they gel, he's going to put his foot on the throat and he's just going to keep going. And that's what I want to see. I want to see some ruthless play calling where he will pick on players and he'll pick on matchups, and we will just see points and yards pouring. Finally, from Gary, thoughts on the new coaching staff today? Well, Mitch and Dan, I'll let you take this. I wax lyrical about them enough.
You go, Dan.
Go for it. Just how can you not be impressed is I guess the easiest way to answer that. Just the way that they've handled everything that goes into the job. Just, it's Mike McDonald has kind of opened the curtain and let us in. He's been pretty honest talking about his process and how, he even spoke a few weeks ago about learning to figure out how to call a game while also administering to being a head coach and managing those other points of the operation. But Ryan Grubb's the same thing. We haven't heard a lot from the other coaches. Dirty has talked a little bit, but they just all seem to be guys that are very, very cognitive is the word that I come up with. Just very
great way to describe them.
Very thoughtful, and there's so much brain power in that room. I think John Schneider said after he hired McDonald, he had a big brain. I think they all do, and they're just a very, very smart group of coaches who are open-minded and don't think they have all the answers. And they continue as they move along. McDonald talked today about Grubb and how willing he is in practice. I think this is the best example of this, to try new things against their defense and then ask questions like, how do you think this worked? What if we tried this? What are you doing to us there? What would you do if I did this? And I don't know that that's existed in the past. If it has on a teaching level, kind of behind the scenes, we didn't see it translate to game day on Sunday, but we're hearing them talk about that process. And then we're seeing some of the results on game day, which I think is all you can hope for. I think the ceiling for this coaching staff is unlimited.
I agree.
Nice.
Mitch?
Yeah, I mentioned this earlier, and I think it's my key point really on the coaching staff. I'm just enjoying being able to watch a coaching staff that are able to adapt and able to screw up the whatever the game plan was and reimagine it at halftime. And based on what they've seen in the first half, we just keep seeing adaptations on the fly, and that's so refreshing compared to what we've seen in recent times. That's my big.
I don't know if you guys saw, there was a shot during the telecast of Grubb in his coach's box, kind of looking at his play sheet was all laid out in front of him, and he was looking at stuff. Did you guys see that shot at all? I'm talking about. Is it just me, or did that play sheet seem 10 times bigger than anyone else?
Yeah, it was huge.
And maybe that's the reason he prefers to be in the box and not on the sidelines, like some guys. Like,
to be holding it like an old school newspaper. I think Josh McDaniel, who was until the last 2 years known as one of the bright offensive minds in the league, and it's double sided, but it's maybe as big as this computer screen. He fits it all on there. I'm like, it's just there's more volume there. It seemed like to me, like just the options. I don't even think the TV screen captured it all. I think it was continuing to just go just panoramic. That's
like 9 pages of stuff.
So, this is for me, and before we move on to the next bit, when it comes to the coaching staff, so Gary, to answer yours, so what's nice for me as a sports coach is to see coaches coaching and coaching well. The majority of this team were the same team we had last season, but the way they're being coached now, Mitch, I'm dropping it in there. Tackling, they practice tackling every week. I have to put it in every pod. The fact that they are fully attuned with what is required of them, with what the fellow players are doing. The fact that every lesson that's being taught about the defense, the offense, their individual skill sets is actually being taken on board, and these players are improving. For me, is the sign of a great coaching staff. So.
Yeah, and I like that also. I don't know if you saw this. I think maybe you didn't because it was shortly before we went on. Again, from McDonald's coaches show this morning, where he was talking about the use of analytics and how it plays into fourth down decisions and whether to kick or go and those types of things. And he talked so openly and honestly about the push and pull and the balance between your head and your heart and using those analytics. And he did say that at the end of regulation, the decision to kick the field goal and play for overtime instead of go for it, he said the analytics slightly favored going for it there. But that's where he brought, all the rest of his skill set and mindset into it. Like, we were unsuccessful a couple of times on short yardage today. They're beating us in that area of the game. It limits what we can do. Our play calls will be limited. So let's just kick it. And I feel good about, moving forward and what we're doing on defense. We can stop them and go from there. That kind of thought process and how it's a humble thought process. They don't feel like they have all the answers. There isn't any arrogance there. There's confidence in their process, but not arrogance, and they're open to all possibilities. And I think whatever you do, teaching, counseling, coaching, that's a great skill.
I completely agree. I just love the fact that all of the Seahawks fans are on the same page with this coaching staff now. It's just so refreshing to see. We've got one last question from the Discord. This is from Leo, who trying to keep it positive, but then Leo gets in the chat. Starting the season 2-0 is great, but my concerns have been: 1, one-score win that could have gone either way. 2, lost the time of possession on both games. 3, we didn't see any improvements regarding the penalties. Total of 12 so far, 6 in each game. I'm not sure how we'll be able to fix those things. I think the time of possession could be fixed if we're able to establish the run, but the O-line has been an issue. What are our thoughts? It's the O-line propping up again. Dan, you brought us up here with the positive O-line talk, but the general consensus of the O-line just brings it down, and it is a bone of contention, and I completely understand it. We've gone over it quite a few times on this pod. Yeah. All I'd say to anyone is give it time.
Yeah, that's the positive spin on this. Is they've won 2 games and they're 2-0 in first place, despite those limitations. They didn't let those limitations beat them. They didn't let them result in losses. They found ways to overcome them, and we've seen a progression now through 8.5 quarters, that it is getting better and trending in the right direction. And you can play that game the other way too. I mean, that Broncos game could have been a 30-point blowout if we don't take 2 safeties, if D. Williams doesn't muff a punt, if Geno Smith doesn't get hit while he's trying to throw and throws an interception. If the game yesterday could have been a much easier win if again, to his point with the offensive line, but if Geno has another split second to throw that other deep ball to DK, or if a couple of receivers catch their passes, it's you can always twist those things either way, right? But I tend to look at the positive until they prove, unless we reach a point where it just becomes unmanageable up front on offense, and teams just figure out how to exploit it, and we don't have any other answers on the roster. I'm seeing the progression, and it's a position group I did not ever expect under any circumstances to come out and play like a top 10 unit in the league from week 1. That's just not going to happen. So ask me again in 6 weeks how I feel about the offensive line. I expect them to be better.
It's such a young unit as well. Around the league, you won't find a younger offensive line unit than the one we've got. So that automatically means it's a high ceiling and teething problems. And like you said, you mentioned it earlier on the pod, those 3 in the interior of the O-line hadn't played an NFL snap together until week 1. And it looked like that in week 1. It was better this week, but still not great. So there is some progression there, I think. So yeah,
focus on. I would tell the people that are concerned is find positive reps and focus on those. There was a moment when Keon White was killing us, and that's when they went to Christian Haynes at right guard, and he had a couple of really positive reps in the run game on 1st and 2nd down. Then 3rd down, he got blown away by Keon White, and that led to the incompletion I talked about that should have been a deep shot to DK. So they went right back to Anthony Bradford on the next series, and Anthony Bradford completely dominated Keon White in that series. There's one play where he shoves him 5 yards downfield and buries him into the turf and gets up and gets in his face. He was inspired by being benched for a series, no doubt, but I've never subscribed to the mentality that a player is good or bad. And I hate the term sucks. I just hate it. Maybe is Laken Tomlinson not the player he used to be? Obviously. Is he not viable as a 17-game starter? Probably. And they need to address that at some point. But Anthony Bradford shows you something every game to make you think he could be the answer. And again, he was one of the youngest offensive linemen at his position in the draft last year. It's just his second year in the league. So let's not give up on that guy yet.
Yeah, agreed. Just very quickly, just to answer this, time in possession. So what was our time in possession? Week 1 was 28 minutes and 46 seconds. Week 2, it was 29 minutes 41. So it's close enough to 50-50. It's not like we were so far behind in the time in possession that the game just escaped us. The time in possession was close, and we still won the game, whether we were in positive or negative. Let's take the positives, that even though we weren't winning the time in possession, we won the games.
And I think that'll continue to turn as the offensive line gets better, but also, they haven't installed their full defense yet. And again, we heard yesterday that, Griffin Sturgeon was talking about this a lot on his Twitter feed today already. And after looking at some cut-ups, that Mike Macdonald hasn't yet quite shown his full hand when it comes to twists and stunts and sim pressures on first and second down that he did when he was in Baltimore. He's showing it on third down and obvious passing downs. He's unloading the playbook there, but he hasn't quite peeled all of the curtain back on his full scheme. And so we haven't seen a lot of turnovers. We haven't seen balls being knocked out. Really, we saw a couple week 1. We didn't see any yesterday. We haven't seen those real disruptive plays. They're getting the quarterback, but they're not getting him to the ground. A couple of those plays go our way, and we just start finishing plays, and all of a sudden that makes a dramatic difference in time of possession. So I think we're going to see that shift.
I think going forward, I think we'll be fine. It's one of those wait and see. It's a young team. It's a new coaching staff. It's a brand new era for Seahawks football, and I think everyone just needs to take everything with a little pinch of salt right now. Hold your horses and just watch how it all unfolds, whether this is a playoff season or this is a building season. It's going to be an exciting season. Speaking of exciting seasons, Dan, what have you got coming up?
Stuff.
Some things.
I've got a Dolphins content creator joining me on Wednesday morning, so we'll get that up probably Thursday. Really excited about it, and looking ahead to that game. And then right now, just before I was on air with you guys today, I was doing some screen captures of every target for DK Metcalf in the game yesterday, and going to do a film breakdown on that. That'll probably be up on the channel tomorrow. Just looking at how he was used, what kind of routes he ran, some missed opportunities, and also how he came up big down the stretch, as he always tends to. So focus a little bit on DK on the show this week.
Excellent.
Nice.
So for anyone that doesn't know, this is Dan Viens. Am I putting the right way, Mitch? This is a common thing on our pod. It always goes the wrong way. Dan Viens, Seahawks Forever. You can catch him on. You can get it the right way first time. Every single time someone will watch it and you'll see me point something. But you've got it easy. You can just point anyway. So Dan Viens, they can find you. What are your tags on socials, Dan? For those who don't know,
at Seahawks Forever on Twitter. That's really all I use associated with the show at this point. And then Seahawks Forever with Dan Viens, the YouTube channel. Subscribe and follow along there.
Awesome. And we've been the 12 Talk podcast. Thank you to everyone who's joined us. If you're a first-time watcher or listener, by all means, like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, jump in our Discord. We would love to have you. We are coming out every single week with a guest, either a Seahawks podcaster, media personality, or you, a 12. If you want to appear, slide into our DMs. We would love to arrange to have you review a game with us. But until next time, until Dan is back on air very soon, and I will be watching. Can't wait. I just want to finish this with a Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
I'll do a Go Hawks too. Always good to join you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, man. Bye.